Hey, Beacon. Hey, I know you're not used to hearing from me on Tuesdays, but I have a bonus episode for you. Did you know that today is National Entrepreneurs Day? That's right. Today is Natural Entrepreneurs Day. And I thought, what better day to share this live coaching call I did with Lindsay of the Passive Income Examiner about the business of her book. And her book is already written, but even if you are in the process of writing your book, you can still take what Lindsay and I discussed and apply it to your book, your business. So grab your journal and tune in as Lindsay and I build the blueprint. Hey, Beacon, welcome home to your Bounce Back Blueprint Community podcast, where you are challenged to be, do, and have God's best as you thrive on your journey from setback to success. I'm your Bounce Back guide, Tiffany Huff Struthers, and I'll be guiding you on the journey by sharing tips, tools, and the tea on how I was able to bounce back from escaping death, healing from heartbreak, and finding hope in homelessness. And then I wrote an award-winning book all about it. And shout out to God, ever since I was courageous enough to share my story, my life and the lives of women around the world have been forever changed. And as a member of the Bounce Back Blueprint community, I'm called to teach you to do the same. So grab your journal and let's build this blueprint. Before we dig in, let me tell you a little bit about Lindsay. Lindsay Sutherland is a dream chaser who left her corporate job for a log cabin in the woods. She is a homeschooling mama of 4 whose mission in life is to live a meaningful life filled with lasting memories and to leave the world a better place, which is why she teaches people to build passive income streams to help them have the freedom they crave so they can build the memories they desire. You can follow her on Instagram at the Passive Income Examiner and tune into her podcast with the same name, the Podcast Income Examiner. Without further ado, I give you my session with Lindsay. Blueprint with Lindsay from the Passive Income Examiner. I'm excited to have her here with us this morning. Lindsay, please introduce yourself to the Bounce Back Blueprint community. Tell us who you are beyond the bio and give us a little bit of insight into your book.
Well, thank you, Tiffany, for having me on as a guest today. My name's Lindsay, and just a little bit about me. I'm a mother of 4, and I had a corporate job in Arizona for the last almost 20 years that was sucking the life out of me, in short. That was the feeling I pretty much had every day. I missed my children. I really wanted to be home with them. So my husband and we had a dream about living in a log cabin in the woods. And it was something that we had talked about off and on for a year, or for years, I should say, not just a year, but 4 years. But it was one of those dreams that felt like it was just going to be someday. And it was nearly impossible to make it a reality. Because, when you get caught up in the city life and you start making money, it's hard to just break away from that.
Absolutely.
And it was like a vortex that just kept sucking me back down. Oh my goodness. And eventually, I finally just couldn't do it anymore. I told him, I said, I feel like I'm slowly dying. Like I had this feeling inside of me.
Wow.
I don't know if you know, but both of my parents passed away. My mom died when I was 12, and my dad, he didn't even make it to retirement. And so for me, the vision of waiting for someday and working in a job that was a soul-sucking job. Now, I have to give the caveat because the people were awesome and it was a really great environment, like as far as it goes, but it was still a grind and a super high stress job. And I knew the stress was taking a toll on my body. I could start to feel things changing that I didn't like. Let's just say.
It's great that you were that self-aware, Some of us just think, well, this is the way life is. This is what I have to do. So you got to that point and then you decided to make some type of change, right?
Yes. I finally sat with my husband and I just said, when are we going to stop talking about this and start doing it? So we made the steps. We got I mean, I think it took a year and a half later, but with many miracles along the way. And I mean, beautiful miracles. It was like God was calling us to live in this northern Idaho is where we ended up. And the magical things that happened along the way, I couldn't have made happen if I tried. It was a great experience for me with deepening my faith and my connection to God. It was a learning experience about how to set intentions. And for once in my life, I, quote, manifested something big, like a house and a new life. And I've never really had ever done something like that before. So there was so many levels of learning. And then when we got to North Idaho, we got into the cabin, and a little while later, I decided, what am I doing with myself? Because I'd been home with the kids. The big boys were in school. Paisley was home with me. And after working for so long, I just found that I felt I needed a bigger purpose. I had a bigger purpose than just being a housewife wasn't cutting it, if that makes sense. And I don't mean to put anybody down, because some people thrive in that environment, and I wish I could. I honestly do. But my brain was just needed more stimulation, basically. I think
I
was
totally
just,
understand. Yes.
okay. I guess I've
And
been a
it's a
little,
different type of stimulation as well.
yes. And so I ended up deciding I was going to be a speaker, and I wanted to be a motivational speaker. I wanted to use my story to kind of get out there to the world. And I found this organization that was on a mission to help women, over 1 million women across the world. It was a global mission. And it invited me to write a book that would be a compilation to a larger book, and the book sales would produce these speaking engagements, and I would be invited to speak at wherever I wanted to. I could travel if I wanted to, but I had to pay my way, or I could just wait till their events got closer to me and it was easier. So I did. I wrote this 10,000 page book, or 10,000 word book, which I realize isn't a huge book, but it was my first ever official book. And I was so determined to do it. I can tell you that I found new depths of what I'm capable of in writing that little short story.
Congratulations to you.
Thank you. It's anybody who has gotten to that point, it is like a huge rush, because you just like, wow, look what I did, and then
It
you
is
see
a
your
huge
name.
rush. I
Yeah.
agree. That's one of the things that I know I experience with my clients a lot. And it's kind of disheartening because it's like, yes, you crossed the finish line, right? But I always tell my clients, finishing the book is actually the beginning of the process. It's not the end, right? So that's one of the myths that we have to debunk right off, because I'm sure you know now, being on the other side of it, after you finish the book, if you don't have a plan for what's going to happen afterwards, then the book kind of just becomes a paperweight, or it's just taking up space on your Google Drive if it's not in physical form.
Yes.
Is that aligned with what you kind of experienced?
Kind of. It's kind of hanging over my head, because that whole organization thing never panned out with COVID, and just in general, I think it wasn't funded well enough. And so now I have this book that I know has a message that needs to be heard, and no desire to do anything with it. Now I just kind of feel like, oh, I should do something. And I guess I left it there. And then I started this podcasting business. And my mission is to help 9-to-5ers find a way to earn income beyond working, so that they can kind of escape the rat race, essentially. And it's like, I have this book and I have this business, and I feel like somehow they should go together, but I don't know how. And the other thing that was bothering me was the ending I wrote. So the ending, at the time, I was going to start a coaching business and just focus on helping people. I think I was going to be like a happiness coach or something like that. And so
Mm-hmm.
I wrote the ending as if that's what I'm doing, because that was my mission when I went to go speak. That was how I figured I would tell my story. And then I ended up getting a job back up here again, just because it just didn't work out. I guess I wasn't set up the way I wanted to be. Things didn't take off, whatever the case may be. Sometimes things happen in God's timing, not my timing.
So are you back to work now?
I am. So now I
So
work.
you're working full time and you have the podcast. Meanwhile, this book is just sitting over there.
Exactly.
So let's talk about it, because one of the things that you said is that you have this podcast and you have this book and you feel like they should go together, but you're not sure how.
Yes.
So we know that your podcast, or for those of you who are listening, Lindsay's podcast, as mentioned in her bio, is the Passive Income Examiner. And ultimately, your podcast, like you said, is about helping 9-to-5ers get out of the rat race, develop some additional income streams to be able to live the life God created them to live. That's in a nutshell, right?
Mm-hmm.
So tell me a little bit about this amazing book that you wrote, and without thinking about how the ending isn't what you wanted it to be, tell me about what your intention was with what you shared in your book.
My intention was to inspire people who have a dream of doing something that seems impossible. Excuse me. And teaching them, because I talk not just about my story and how I made it possible, but also strategic things that I learned. I reflected back on my experience, and I extracted tangible things that people can do to get themselves from where they are to where they want to be. And I clearly defined them, but I also dive deep into the story, the actual events and the relationships. I mean, that whole experience put a real strain on my husband and I. I mean, I talk about our relationship. So it goes emotionally deep, but then it's also tangible tips kind of all mixed in.
So the book is ultimately like the down and dirty of how you got to the point of having the podcast and sharing those tips, tools, strategies, and ways to implement your dream or make the impossible possible, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is that kind of the gist of the book?
Yes.
Okay, so what I always teach my clients and what I want you to consider is when you have a book and then you are building a business around it, you really need to know the message of your book. So like, what is the mission statement for your book? A lot of people call it an elevator pitch, but it should be something you could clearly state concisely, very similar to when someone says, what is the Passive Income Examiner? Right? So I want you to consider how you can meld the mission statement of the book and the podcast together so that you have one succinct message, right? Okay. So that's the first thing. And that's a huge question, right? Obviously, it's something that takes some time and some thought. So I want you to consider that. Like if you were to put the two together, thinking outside of the box now, right? Mm-hmm. Again, not letting the fact that you aren't sure about the ending cloud your judgment. But if you put the two together, what would you say would be the mission of the two?
I would say the mission of the two is, in short, how to escape the rat race. But something I've learned is that the rat race doesn't have to be actually the job. So for me, leaving the rat race meant the job I have is much more relaxing. It's much more enjoyable. I don't feel that suffocating stress that I was having in my high paying corporate job. And it still pays my bills, but it also affords me time with my family more than I had before. Is it my end game? No. But is it a great little stepping stone? Yes. And I'm learning that sometimes our best life or living a meaningful life, that's what it is actually, Tiffany. How to live a meaningful life. And in both cases, it would be that way because, earning a passive income could mean that you could take 1 or 2 days off a week of your regular job and you have balance. It could mean that you have enough savings to do more fun family vacations. It could just mean that you have more quality time with your family, but you still keep your job. In both cases, you don't have to necessarily quit your career.
So it's escaping the rat race, how to live a meaningful life on your own terms, right?
Yes.
With passive income to support that lifestyle.
Right.
Right. So then with that in mind, when you think, do you have a title for your book already?
Well, at the time I named it Rat Race Rebellion, my journey to freedom.
Okay. I like it because, and that's the good thing about it, is that you're still on the journey. And so you put the book out, but you continue to take people on the journey with you via the podcast, right? So that's one thing. So now I want you to think about when you are developing the plan for your book, for the business of your book, which you already have the podcast, so you're building community already. But when you're thinking about how you can take the book beyond the book, right? You want to think about 3 questions I always have people answer. So I'm going to give you the 3 questions, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And these might be, some of these you'll know off the top of your head. In fact, I think you alluded to a little bit of it. And then you may also need some additional time to work through these. So the first question is, what did you learn from your experience, right? So what did you learn during your journey of escaping the rat race, or your rat race rebellion? And that started from the time that you realized this isn't working, to you packing up and moving, to the challenges that you've had, and to then going back to work and now having the podcast. Like, what were the top 3 lessons that you learned from your journey? And I know that you said one of them was that escaping the rat race doesn't necessarily mean that you don't work anymore.
Exactly. Another one that I learned is about setting intentions. So I had no way of knowing how I could get from Arizona to Idaho with my family, with no job, no friends, and no family. The idea, like when I would try to think about it, it seemed farther and farther away. So I had to learn to let go of the how and trust God and just put it in God's hands and let miracles happen. That was the most profound experience I think I've gotten from that whole thing.
So you have those 3 lessons, right? It's that escaping the rat race rebellion is about designing what meaningful life is to you. It's about how to reduce your stress. And then ultimately, I would say your 3rd lesson is developing passive income to support said life.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And then what the next question is, how has your life changed, or how has your life transformed? How have you transformed as a result of those lessons? And the answers to these questions are really important because they create the framework not only for how you'll market your book, but also for the products and services you'll develop in the business of your book. And I think even your responses to these questions will inform some of your podcast content as well.
Okay. Actually, you're right. It's definitely molding my mind. I'm a little amazed at how this was right in front of me and I couldn't see it.
Well, sometimes we need to take a step back, right, to get some clarity. And also sometimes we need someone else to give us that perspective. And that is why I do the work that I do. One of the biggest challenges for authors or aspiring authors is the myth of writer's block. And I'm a firm believer that writer's block is not a myth. It is a lack of clarity that we have that causes us to believe that we have writer's block. So this book you have written already is a gold mine. It's just a matter of you digging the gold out so that you can see it, and then you have the clarity about it so that you can share it with others.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about your transformation. What has changed in your life? How has your life become better as a result of the journey you went on from your rat race rebellion? I love that name.
So I think one thing is my health. Like you said, that being mindful. One thing I believe we need more of in America is people to speak their truth. And it doesn't have to be in an aggressive, bossy, I'm better than you way. It's in an assertive, confident, peaceful, serene way that says, this is true for me. I respect you. You have your own opinions and beliefs, but this is true for me. And honoring that. And it's so easy to get caught up in the chaos and the what other people think of me, or more so when you have family. Like when we were leaving, my my dear aunt, I love her dearly, but since my parents passed, she kind of took over as my surrogate parent, so to speak, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
grateful for that. But she desperately tried to talk me out of moving. And so being able to be convicted and know that this is true for me and walk the path without, I mean, I've had fear, there's no doubt,
Right.
but to walk it anyway, to walk it with bravery, to walk it with trust,
Faith.
that changed my life. Like I now it's kind of like when you write the book, right? When you're at the beginning and you have 0 words on the paper, and then all of a sudden you have 10,000 words on the paper. You couldn't imagine what it feels like to have those 10,000 words until you have the 10,000 words. Like it doesn't
That's right.
become significant. And so
That's right.
that was my biggest transformation, like walking, trusting, even though I was scared, even though we weren't sure. And this was another one that was huge for me. Even though a lot of bad things happened during that process. I mean, even though there were, people would say challenges, but quite frankly, I called them disasters. I had a flood in my house in Arizona as I was trying to sell it. My husband was gone. I was working full time. My kids were with my mother-in-law. I mean, we were all 7 of us were living with my sister. It was utter chaos. And yet I still maintained that. Whereas in the past, this is what was big difference for me. I would have said, I guess it's not meant to be.
And part of that realization and that clarity, I'm sure, had to do with you leaving that rat race and having some space in your mind to say, this is worth it because of where we're going, right? This is going to decrease that stress. So you have all of the stuff here, Lindsay. You have the lessons you've learned and you have the transformation. The question is, what are you going to do with it? Now, earlier in the conversation, you said at the beginning that speaking was something you were really interested in. And speaking is great, although it's not always a passive income stream. What you do with your speaking could become a passive income stream. So I want you to consider, when you're thinking about the transformation and the lessons learned, how those transform into sales. So clearly, speaking is a way that you can make money. Even now, with the pandemic and not being able to travel, virtual events and summits and conferences and speaking engagements are huge. They haven't decreased. So really thinking about how you can develop a signature talk about the rat race rebellion. And I think the difference, what would set you apart, is twofold. First, you aren't necessarily going to say, these are the steps that you take and that's it. You also have the pieces about mindset, and then you have the pieces about developing passive income that set you apart. And those are the things that you want to use to position yourself and the business of your book.
I'm sitting over here thinking to myself, holy cow, I had no idea.
It's like the rat race rebellion, developing a meaningful life, a meaningful stress-free life, finding your voice, or, honoring your voice and building the life you want with passive income, right? Those are kind of like your buckets. And so with that in mind, now you can begin to think about your speaking. You can begin to think about courses that you could teach. You could begin to think about digital products you could sell, right? And these are those pieces, those different income streams you can develop to build your business as an authorpreneur. And again, your podcast is only going to strengthen that because it's going to expand your reach.
So that's really powerful on that, because I don't know, I didn't mention this, but prior to meeting you, so recently I decided, I should do something with this book thing. So I reached out to a couple different publishers. Some of them were like just going to teach me how to publish it on Amazon. And it was like $500 to get it formatted. And I thought, I don't know, because I don't really think I'm going to make that money back on my book. Essentially, I have no idea. And then I've heard it, you can't make money selling a book. I've heard that so many times. You cannot be successful financially as an author speaker. Do you know that I've been told that by full-on event coordinators who basically said, unless I have something I'm selling, don't even waste my time trying. And
So
that
there
was
is a
so
little bit of truth to that. However, again, you have to think outside of the box. I'm a firm believer that sometimes because people don't have the foresight, they go from living check to check to living book to book. Meaning like, okay, if my book costs $15, how many books do I need to sell to pay the mortgage this month? If my book costs $15, how many books do I need to sell to pay my car payment? And that is not the lifestyle that you want to live. Your book is your social proof. It builds your credibility. It is what makes you an expert in your field. You use your book to open the doors, right? You use your book to get to the speaking engagement, because that credibility is what gets you in the door. And then you're selling the transformation. You're selling the lessons. You're not selling the book. So that when you hit the stage and you sell the lessons and you sell the transformation, or you serve, I should say, through sharing the lessons and the transformation, everybody's going to want to buy the book because they're going to want to know more. However, the book sale is extra because you've already been paid to speak.
Okay.
Right? So that is why it's so important to be able to answer. So I gave you the first two questions. What have you learned? Right? What were the greatest lessons you learned? And I always encourage my clients to come up with a solid 3. Although when I work with them during a VIP day, we will come up with an exhaustive list and then, scale it back. The second one is, how has your life transformed? How might you be able to help other people transform their lives, right? Again, solid 3, but we would start with an expansive list. And then the third question is, which pieces of those top 3 for the first 2 questions, where is it timely, and who is it timely for you to put that message out and begin to serve and sell with that message? And I can tell you right now, your message is very timely with all of the uncertainty in the world, right? With people being laid off from their jobs, with people being stressed out if they're still going to work because of all of the changes. It is the perfect time for you to take the message of rat race rebellion to the streets.
Okay. And I guess one thing I'm wondering, because that's all adding up, and is very I'm still like, I'm kind of in awe, actually. That's why I'm so quiet. I'm over here just like contemplating this, thinking, wow, this is really clear. And I mean, so right there, I'm just in shock that I couldn't even put it together, not even halfway. But I'm wondering, what is it like? Can you kind of paint a picture for me of what it would be like to market this? Because I mean, that's all great, and I've got the message, but then I quite frankly, I don't have time to spend on social media touting my story and writing in groups. And is that part of the process, or are there better, like more efficient ways to promote it?
Well, I want to take you back to your own foundation, which is that you create the meaningful life that you want by doing the things that aren't going to stress you, but are going to honor your voice and diffuse imposter syndrome, right? So you want to maintain those values as you're building your business, because that's what your message is, okay? And with that in mind, I want you to consider the value of your podcast. Right? So you have a podcast, you have a captive audience. And so you're going to do most of your promotion there. You're already on your podcast, right? You could do some giveaways. You could ask people to do early reviews for you before you put it out, right? So you have to think about how you can leverage your community, the currency of community, the currency of collaboration, and the currency of clarity. All 3 things that I work with my clients to develop the strategy that's going to help them build the business, but also to work smarter and not harder. So I want you to think about the resources that you have in people, places, and things that you could use to leverage this without making it more stressful and more work.
Okay. I'll give that some thought.
So absolutely your podcast. If you had to rattle off 3 others, what would they be?
Um, well, I would see one thing I don't know of, like you mentioned, there's a lot of virtual speaking things. I don't know how to find out about those. So I guess I would Google that probably to start, and see if there's a way that, I could be interviewed, maybe get on other people's podcasts and talk about it.
Yes, definitely other podcasts. And also, I will give you 3 tips as it relates to finding speaking engagements. Go on Eventbrite. Are you familiar with the Eventbrite?
Mm-hmm.
You can go on Eventbrite and do searches for different events, and you can reach out to the host of those events, even if they already have their speakers. Let them know that you're interested. Let them know if anybody backs out, you would be available. Let them know what you would speak about or what you have to share about. So you can do that with Eventbrite. You can also do that on Facebook. Tons of events all over Facebook. Some of them are even happening on Facebook. You can also leverage communities that you're already a part of. That could be your church, that could be your work, that could be Facebook groups that you're in, and speak to people and let people know that this is what you're doing and why you're doing it and how you can help. The other thing is to look at existing virtual communities. Now, I know you said you don't want to join a bunch of groups and have to do all of that legwork, but it's research to finding these groups and communities that you can then leverage your expertise to. Because here's what will happen, Lindsay. If you start to speak, even if it's not big events at first, if you start to speak in Facebook groups, or say there's a meetup group, right? Meetup.com, if you're familiar with that. If you start to speak in these groups, then you record your speaking engagements, and then you can use said recordings to sell as a course or as a masterclass or something like that. And then you sell it, and then you can upsell your book. So say you had a speaking engagement about escaping or the rat race rebellion, 3 keys to whatever. That then becomes a masterclass. Now on your podcast, when you are sharing about the book that you have coming out or that this book is available, you can also say, and if you want to go even deeper into what we discussed today, here's this masterclass I have. You can grab it with the link in the show notes and let me know what you think. Easy peasy.
Okay.
The possibilities are endless once you get those 3 questions answered and you have them succinctly. Then, like I said, you have the framework to develop your signature speaking. You have the framework to develop a course and also many courses, because you can have a course that covers everything, but then you could have many courses that are broken down by those 3 lessons, right? You could potentially create a journal or a workbook to go with your book for the person who's trying to transition out of that the rat race, and so they can get clarity about what it really looks like for them. But again, you have to get those answers down pat so that you can use that framework as you build out everything else.
Yeah.
But that framework is really the blueprint, hence the bounce back blueprint. The framework is really the blueprint for your book, even if it isn't written. But if you have written your book, it's the framework for the business of your book. Okay. So that you can get beyond the book.
Beyond the book. Okay. See, we all make it about the book. And I love that. That's, you've taught me more in this 30 minutes than I think I've been at this. I wrote that book about 18 months ago. And it's been just sitting there collecting virtual dust this whole time. And I've definitely tried. It's not like I haven't just given up on it, but everybody just tells me, it's not enough. It's not enough. Or you need a producer, but you're never going to you can't put it out on Amazon all by yourself, stuff like that.
That's a lie.
Yeah.
All of these things you've been told are lies, and hopefully I've debunked them for you.
Yeah.
I will say that some of the steps you need to take even before you get into, what we've been talking about, you need to do some interviewing of editors, because you really do want someone to edit your book, and you want to having, when you are selecting an editor, and also the person who will design your cover art is almost like going on dates. You want to really get to know this person. You want to make sure that you have synergy with them before you like invite them to eat at your house, right?
Actually, I did get an editor. That was part of the requirement. The book actually cost me money, not just time, because it was required that it had been professionally edited, and then they made the cover art, which I wasn't a fan of. I would definitely do something different with it, but I didn't have a say, so I just went along with it. Um, but you're absolutely right about that editor relationship thing. She became a good friend of mine and she was magical. What was cool about her is she taught me to be a better writer.
That's so important.
Yeah. I already, not to like toot my own horn, but I kind of have a gift for writing. I didn't even realize it though, until just before coming out here, that this was one of my strengths. And then writing it, but she had a degree in the written word and like an official English degree. And the way she would say, you need to expand here. And so one thing, my mind is very literal and black and white and tactical, so to speak. She really helped me open up into more detailed, descriptive words and really painting a picture. Honestly,
yes.
When I go back and read my book, I get chills. It's crazy. That's how amazing the book is. Like, it's got to get out there. I know God wouldn't have put it in my heart to write it if he didn't have a reason for it to go somewhere.
That's right. And this conversation, this coaching that we're doing here is not by chance. So I want to give you some next steps. And then I also want to make sure that I give you the opportunity to ask any final questions that you have. Okay. So the first step that I want you to take is to go back and reread your book.
Okay.
I want you to go back and reread your book. And I want you to do that with those 3 questions in mind that I gave you. And then after, so that's number 1, reread your book. Number 2 is to answer those questions. And then number 3 would be, well, it would be one of 2 things. It would be to either book a VIP day with me or work diligently, take some time, set it aside, and work very diligently to try and map out your blueprint for, launching this book and then going beyond the book.
Yeah.
So with that in mind, with those 3 steps in mind and those 3 questions, those 3 questions that I asked you, do you have any final questions for me?
Not right at the moment. My mind, I think, is just processing everything. And the first thing I want to do is re-listen to this audio and write things down. I'm a journaler, so I need to like write it out.
Yes.
And then make the list. And this is perfect timing because I was sitting here trying to map out my marketing for the next year. And I wanted to develop some courses, and it all felt so rote, like just like what every other coach is doing, write out this course and this blah, blah, blah. And it didn't feel infused. And now I feel like you've connected that passion with I don't know. It's like you've connected the pieces of the puzzle, and
yes.
Now I need to go back to the drawing board and infuse my mission. And I think it'll help me finish because it's actually right here on my whiteboard next to me, and it's got these holes, and it's like, well, now I know what's missing. It's the feeling part of it.
That's right. And I'm super excited to see after you re-listen to this episode, reread the book and start to, answer those questions. I'm really excited to see and hear what you come up with. So definitely keep in touch. Let me know what this process, because after you re-listen, after you answer the questions and reread the book, you're going to get even more clarity. So I'm really excited to hear about how this process infuses what you'll do next, how it will impact your podcast moving forward, and how your plan for 2021 shifts as a result of this process.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be amazing, and I'm really looking forward to reading the book.
Awesome. Can you, I thought of just one little extra question. Can you tell me what exactly you do in the VIP day, like a little more about that?
Yes. So in your case, the VIP day would be the business of your book VIP day. I actually do 2 different VIP days. One is called a Writer Unblocked VIP day. And the Writer Unblocked VIP day really starts from the beginning of the process and goes through the end. So taking you from having written very little or having written nothing at all, helping you to understand why you're writing the book, really doing the work to develop that mission of your book, going through those 3 lessons, going through those 3 transformations, really breaking that down, and then moving into what I call dump writing. And that is to develop your outline and make sure you have writing prompts for everything that you need to cover in your book. And then once we get through that part of it, we go into, once the book is written, here is what you need to do for the business portion of the book. Actually, it's before the book is actually written. How do you leverage the currency of community, the currency of collaboration, the currency of clarity, like we talked about, to map out that plan? On the other side of it, the business of the book VIP Day is all of that. So it's all about that collaboration, that leveraging community and clarity, and then looking at the products and services that will be birthed out of that. And in many cases, it's actually developing that signature talk or creating the framework for that signature course, product, or service that you will launch with or very shortly after the book.
How often?
And really, and really the experience and the transformation that you're selling, right? Making sure you have the mindset that you are not an author, period. You're an authorpreneur. And so what that looks like and what the experience with Lindsay is, what the experience with Lindsay's book is.
Okay. How often do you do these VIP days?
I do them 2 to 3 times a month. It depends on scheduling, obviously. Usually I do them on Thursdays, Fridays, or Saturdays. And it obviously depends on the client. It also depends on my schedule with speaking engagements or other coaching commitments, but usually 2 to 3 times a month.
Okay. And then the details of that on your website, when I'm ready, I can go there.
Yeah, everything is there. TiffanyHuffExperience.com, or you can, that's the best way, or you can email me, hello@TiffanyHuffExperience.com, all of which will be in the show notes for you to get access to schedule all of those things.
Okay. Excellent. Yeah, I'm excited. I just kind of feel like you basically were God speaking for me today. He's like,
wow, well, I definitely take that as a compliment. I believe that he uses us all. So I wasn't him speaking. I was simply the vessel, and it was my pleasure. I'm really excited about the work that you've already done and what he has been equipping you to do along this journey thus far. And it's going to be an exciting 2021 for you for sure.
Thank you. That gave me chills. I'm excited.
Likewise. Oh. Thank you so much for being here, Lindsay. Before I let you go, tell our listeners, tell the Bounce Back community where they can find your podcast and get in touch with you as well.
So my podcast is the Passive Income Examiner on any platform that you listen to podcasts. My website will be launched this week, and that'll be thepassiveincomeexaminer.com. Woo-hoo. And really where I hang out the most is on Facebook. I have a Facebook community. It's just facebook.com/groups/the Passive Income Examiner community.
Great. And I will make sure to link to all of that in the show notes as well for anybody who wants to connect with you and be with you on this journey. Thank you again, Lindsay, for being here, and I look forward to hearing from you soon.
Thank you for all your wisdom nuggets.
Well, I hope you were blessed by this bonus episode and you took plenty of notes as you prepare to build the business of your book. I would love to hear your feedback about this episode. You can take a screenshot, tag me on social at the Tiffany Huff, or of course, if you want to take it a step further, you can grab the link in the show notes and schedule your breakthrough session so that we can work together and build the business of your book. No greater time than the present. That is at bit.ly/yourbouncebackguide. I look forward to connecting with you. And of course, if you have not already, be sure to leave a review. When you do, you create an opportunity for someone else to find the podcast and be blessed the same as you. Of course, before I let you go, I would like to let you know God is not going to play you, but If you are not investing in the power of your story and preparing to build the business of your book, I promise you are playing yourself. Be blessed.